All right, let's go through some of the more fun myths and crazy things that I've heard from about on hormones. Um, Probably my favorite one that I always think is hilarious is when people say that, and medical doctors are big on this one. But again, like, why are you listening? Like, look at the track record of those guys. The biggest one is that steroids cause heart attacks, and they're really bad for your cardiovascular system. They're really bad for your heart. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Testosterone increases. Let's specifically talk about testosterone because this is the one that they're still pushing against. Testosterone increases viscosity of the blood. And so what ends up happening is that you increase what's called hemoglobin and hematocrit. Those are the red blood cells that carry oxygen. If you get too many of them, your blood gets a little bit thick, and it gets a little bit more difficult for the heart to push around. And the pressure, because there's more volume in the blood, the viscosity is higher. The pressure on your blood vessels can go up a little bit. Cool, 100%. That's a thing. That's why you take just like this much personal responsibility, and you get your blood drawn a couple times a year, 3 or 4 times a year. If your H&H gets a little high, you donate blood, and you're fine. The amount of heart attacks that are caused by testosterone use is really, 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 really low. The amount that's caused by sugar and processed foods, really, really high. So, people are like, oh, I hear this from doctors. Well, my doctor told me that, I shouldn't take testosterone because it's really, really bad. It's also the healing hormone. So what does testosterone do? What are steroids known to do? The one thing people know, it makes everything stronger. Okay, it makes muscles stronger. It makes them able to lift more weight longer. So it increases mitochondrial density. It increases strength, pliability, functionality, athletic performance. In muscles, your heart is a muscle. Really? So we're thinking that lower testosterone is better for your heart. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Okay, not really big a thing. One of the things the other one that I love to hear is that if you take steroids, you're going to be angry and mean and lose your cool and hurt people, and that's just roid rage is totally a thing. I've never seen it. I hang out with a lot of bodybuilders. I hang out with a lot of people who aren't bodybuilders, who are on a significant amount, and they're, for the most part, the nicest people I know. That's just kind of where it is. Now, someone who is low on testosterone and depressed and kind of mopey, okay, I guess, but those people are less, I guess, of a danger. But I haven't seen anybody who's had that specific issue. Now, what I have seen is people who happen to be on a steroid and they are running a calorie-based diet, and they cut their calories back but leave carbohydrates in, creating a low blood sugar scenario that's constantly wearing on them. And then that increases fatigue function and reactive oxidative stress, and that creates a problem. So I would tell you that an improper use of diet does create angry people. I think we've all seen somebody who's hangry. So that's a thing. Now, I think where the confusion comes in is where they see bodybuilders who are obviously on a whole host of steroids, and they're cutting for a show because they're using the calorie model, and they're starving, and they're grumpy, and they have just enough carbohydrates to maintain a sugar state. So their body is literally eating in their muscle tissue to keep them alive. And they're hungry and hangry all the time, say 2-3 weeks before show. And people see them and they're like, wow, those people are super angry. Again, not the hormones, 100% the diet. So that's a thing. I think we see a lot of people who are worried about damage from testosterone and hormones and things like that. Okay. The problem that I see with that one is that is, again, a dietary function. They don't understand how the body actually works. This goes back to why I'm always pissy about the calories thing. If you don't understand that your body runs on very specific chemistry, and I say very specific, your body's really good at like figuring out how to make things happen. So that's one of those big things that you kind of have to factor in. So are you getting in your B vitamins? Are you getting in your methylated folic acid? Are you getting in, your omega-3s? Are you getting in your saturated fats? Are you getting in, your minerals? Are you getting all the things that your body requires to run? If you are, your body can do a good job. Now, here's the thing. When you add in an anabolic, it's going to do something that's going to make your body produce more tissue. Anabolic means grow, to add to. It can't do that very well if you don't give it the chemicals it requires to build things. So that creates a problem. If your liver has to now go out and scavenge pieces and parts and whatnot to build new cells and build new tissue and break apart old stuff, and you scavenge this chemical from over here and take this one and cut it in half and take this piece, and this part's now metabolic waste, that's a problem. I see that more often than not. People come in. I see this a lot with women too. Like my women who are competing, my bodybuilders, my models, those sort of things, where they'll come in and they'll be like, oh man, my anxiety is really bad, or I'm getting angry, or my emotions are just kind of all over the place. And you look at their nutrient density, and I'm like, oh my god, you're out of everything, and your gut is fried, and so you're not producing any serotonin, so you feel horrible all the time. You have a massive parasitic infection. This is what I see like all the time. Like I have a lot of women who come see me who are competing, or who are in the process of competing, or just have competed, and they're emotional wrecks. And they're like, I wasn't like this a little while ago. I don't know what's going on. Well, here's the thing. Let's assume that they have parasitic infections, because the vast majority of people do. What ends up happening is when they increase their anabolics, they increase the drive to build things, which increases the need for nutrients. Where in a lot of these women at the same time, because of their cutting system, they're decreasing the intake of all nutrients. If they have a parasitic infection where they were low on nutrients to begin with, now they're significantly lower. And so their body just runs out of reserves. And so that's where they end up. And so you've got to completely rebuild the gut. You're like, all right, cool. We're going to do the kill and refill, kill the parasites, kill the yeast, restore the probiotic function, and then feed the probiotic function. So the thing on that I keep telling people, I don't know if anybody's listening, your gut flora is specific to your body and what you're eating. And so, this whole like, well, what's the best, everyone should have this type of gut flora. Again, there isn't a diet for people. There's a diet for a person. There's not a gut flora for people. There's a gut flora for a person. And so it is vastly built upon what you're eating. And so if you start eating a specific diet, it will feed the bacteria that you have. Those bacteria will grow and populate in the gut. Now, if you're eating a whole food diet that has lots of everything in it, you'll have a lot of different bacteria. Is that better or worse? There's arguments on both sides. If you're eating a very specific diet, let's say you're eating a carnivore diet, your body's going to be really good at breaking down meats and things that are in the carnivore diet. If you're eating a vegetarian diet, it'll start drifting that way. So yeah, the gut flora is going to be a little bit different. So depending on what you're getting in, depends on a lot of the gut flora. So if you're not bringing stuff in and you have high stress, what you're going to end up doing is frying the gut. And we see that all the time. And guess what? For any of the women who are competing or thinking about competing, you might not feel this way. You'd be one of the odd ones out. Competing is very stressful. The work up to it, how you feel about yourself the entire time, getting ready. Then what most people, not everybody, what most people see, especially when they're competing for real. When you're doing it for fun, or you're doing it just as a marker, it's not that big of a deal. But when you're doing it for, I need this to progress in whatever I'm doing, right? Whether it's you have to win to progress to the next stage or whatever, it's very stressful. And so you have the psychological emotional component that almost never is factored into function, which is 60-70% of how your body actually reacts to the outside world. And so while we don't focus on it because there's not a lot of drugs you can sell for it, wildly important to the overall function. This is why people who have high stress have all sorts of gut issues. Ulcerative colitis, they have GERD, they have ulcers in the stomach, they have all sorts of issues. because of the psychological component that shuts off the gut. And so if you're stressed out and you're not taking in ample nutrients and you have a parasitic infection, which is about 90% of the competitors that I've worked with, and to be fair, it's about 90% of all the competitors, you're going to have deficiencies that you have to refill before you can move forward. And one of the big things that we see when we're looking at athletes is your nutrient needs are significantly higher than everybody else to begin with, because you have the same stress everybody else has, and usually a little bit other stressors. You've got a lot of physical demand needs because you're moving your body, you're requiring all the chemistry, you're doing all those things. And then if you're cutting, so you're not bringing in nutrients, that's another issue. So remember, there's more than just calories in food, right? Even if you're doing it the worst possible way you can measure things, and you're using calories. You know, if you're like, well, I'm going to cut my calories back, great. So you cut back, sugar, fiber, starch, all protein, saturated fats, unsaturated fats, all those things you cut back on, what your body uses differently. And so you don't have those things, but you're also aren't getting in any of the, B vitamins, any of the food to keep your gut flora functioning and healthy, any of the stuff any of the nutrients, any of the vitamins and minerals that your body requires to function. So those are things that we have to factor in as well. So when you're looking at an athlete, this is why I always say no athlete should see a non-athlete doctor, because if this doctor is going by what has been normally said for normal people, then they're never going to be able to treat athletes properly, because athletes are not normal people. Their demands are higher, their needs are higher, the mental function is completely different. Everything about an athlete, specifically the more advanced this athlete gets, the more different they are. Even in blood work, this is the biggest thing. Like, I'll have athletes come in, like, you can send me blood work and I'll be like, you're an athlete or not. Like, you worked out this morning. That's one of the easiest things is to find on labs. Like, I say this I talk about this all the time, but I'll get labs in and people would be like, my doctor was freaking out, telling me I was going to die and all these different things. And I was like, did you work out this morning? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, did you take your pre-workout? Or, of course I did. I'm like, that's why this looks like that. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, your ALT, AST is higher because that's what happens when you work out. Your creatinine's higher because that's what happens when you work out. Your BUN nitrogen is higher because that's what happens when you work out. Like, those are pretty obvious things, chemically that happen when you work out. But again, if you don't treat athletes, you don't know to look for those things. So there's a lot of this that when we're talking about hormones that people aren't gathering. So yeah, a lot of times, women come in and they're like, oh, well, women need estrogen and progesterone and this and that. Not if they're not trying to have babies. Like, you don't need that much progesterone. You do need the estrogen. Testosterone converts to estrogen. So you don't need to be on 6 different things. Most women, if you just give them testosterone and you understand how the body works, you give them testosterone, it converts over. You're good. So these compounded pellets with, specialty bioidentical, this and that, we're going to give you this much testosterone and this much estrogen and this and that. Don't. Like, here's the thing. The thing about hormones that people really need to understand is that the numbers are kind of squishy. So, like, you talk to women and you're like, hey, do you have hot flashes, night sweats, and vaginal dryness? And they're like, yeah. And their their estrogen's 30. I'm like, all right, cool. You put them on testosterone, and their estrogens go to 45. And you go, do you have hot flashes, night sweats, or vaginal dryness? They're like, yeah, all those things went away. It's fantastic, feel great. Guess what? They don't need more than 45. Now, if you're trying to have a baby, this is a different conversation. But that's one of those things. Like, this isn't a dangerous thing. The thing that makes it dangerous, like I was alluding earlier, is what are you getting in that completes the picture? Because it's not just, your body doesn't just run on hormones and calories. This is the problem that people are getting into. Your body runs on this giant swath of chemicals. And so if you're going to get the chemicals in, you're going to be totally fine. Because again, what are you trying to do with an anabolic? You're like, well, I'm trying to lose weight. I hope not. Fat loss is catabolic. If you're trying to increase an anabolic function, you're trying to grow tissue, you've got to feed the body the required nutrients it has to build that muscle tissue. If you don't give it the nutrients, you're just sitting there spinning it. Or, well, people go, well, I'm just trying to burn some fat, so I'll increase my metabolism with the anabolics and I'll burn some fat. That's not the best idea. You're burning up a totally different system. If you want to reduce fat, put yourself in a fat utilization state with your diet, and then restrict the amount of fat you're giving. This is intermittent fasting. That's probably the best way to do it. This is one of those things where you're giving the body just a little bit of fat throughout the day to maintain a fat burning system or fat utilization system for energy. And so that's a great way. But again, you lose fat with diet. The reason why when you exercise you lose fat is because your body requires extra energy to create tissue, but it has to have all the components. And this is not whey protein from a protein smoothie. Sorry. If you want muscle, eat muscle. I heard Gary Breck come out and be like, if you eat fingernails, it's not going to help your body create fingernails. 100% that's wrong. 100% that's wrong. If you give the body the required chemicals and required nutrients, it can then make that thing better. If you give your body red meat, it's going to make the red meat that's in you easier. If you ate fingernails, I'm not saying you should do this, but if you ate fingernails, it's going to give your body all the chemicals that your body uses to make fingernails. And so it will then be able to make fingernails a little bit easier. This is part of the whole, which I think is hilarious because everybody's out against collagen now. And Brecca was such a huge component of drinking bone broth in the morning to stave off, muscle loss. And I hate to tell you this, guys, but bone broth is collagen. So if you guys are looking for some of these things, one of the things that this is the stuff I see missed all the time is everyone's looking at the hormone, but they're not looking at what happens once the hormone gets in the body. They're not looking at the nutrient needs. They're not looking at the detoxification needs that all went way up. You're creating more stuff. So just like if someone's building a house or a building or a road, as they're building things, they're going to have a lot of waste. You've got to make sure you get that waste out. You got to make sure you give the body the required tools and everything to build the building, build the structure, so it's building it properly. These are the things that I'm not seeing being done, because I see people come in with these really great, cycles, and I'm like, cool, what are you eating? And they're like, well, I'm also trying to go lean, so I'm only eating like 1,600 calories. I'm like, that tells me nothing. How much fiber are you getting? How much sugar are you getting? How much protein are you getting? What type of protein are you getting? What type of fats are you getting? What are the building blocks you're taking in that your body requires to grow things? Your body builds your cells at a saturated fat. How much saturated fat are you getting in? If you're eating chicken, not a lot. So these are the things that we need to start factoring in outside of the other things about testosterone that are, I think silly. So it's not going to make you angry. It's not going to create heart issues by itself. It's not going to, do some stuff. Now, one of the things it will do in men is suppress sperm production, which again, if that's a goal, there you go, positive. So it will reduce the amount of you're naturally producing. But here's the thing, for 90% of the people who are out there, you're not producing enough to begin with. People ask me all the time, well, when can I get off? Whenever you want. Will this help my body produce testosterone? No, it won't. Nothing will. Your nutrients are low, you've been poisoned, you're stressed out, you've got 15 other things that are suppressing testosterone production. All the endocrine disruptors, all the atrazine, the water, all these things, it's not going to be there. And people go, well, that makes me mad. Me too. Makes me mad too. Wish that all of our bodies were going to work the way we want to, but it's not the way that the people who ran this country have set it up to. What's in our food and water and air, the stuff we're being poisoned with. Sorry, that's not where we're at. So quit blaming the steroids for the things that everything else has been doing. One of the biggest issues you see with steroids is not anabolic steroids, but with like prednisone and anti-inflammatory steroids. Those are great for like a very short amount of time. You take them for a long time, it's going to create all sorts of damage to your endocrine system and all sorts of problems. So let's differentiate that. Yes, the anti-inflammatory steroids, long-term use is really, really bad for you. The long-term use, like 20, 30, 50 years of proper amount of utilization of hormones and steroids like testosterone, extremely important to the body, extremely functional. You cannot be healthy without it. So those are some of the things that I just off the top of my head, I saw a post on it, so I wanted to throw it out. You guys have any other questions? Just have questions at chalmerswellness.com. If you're wondering about those things, get with somebody who knows what they're doing. Like, it doesn't take very long for you to be like, okay, what are your goals? I just want to do this. Great. For that box, here's the things you need to know. Here's things you need to do. Go home and be good. Like most people, like most guys, most women, if you bring your testosterone levels up to where they're supposed to be and you eat a moderately decent diet, you're going to be fine. The further you push that down the road, the more intricate things get. Like a 4-cylinder Honda isn't as sophisticated as a F1 race car. And so there's more things you got to know and more things you got to deal with the F1 race car than you do with the 4-cylinder Honda. So the more you use, the more important it is. But at the same time, there's a lot of this stuff that, you know, you guys can utilize as you go along. It's just the further you get down the road, the more specific you have to be. But if you guys have any other questions, hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com, or just drop in the comments. We'll see you in the DMs. Have a good day. Thanks for your time.